Good morning, my fellow Belizeans. I greet you with wishes in the spirit of this glorious month of September, when we celebrate the two most important days on our calendar. The 10th of September, when our forebearers won the Battle of St. George's Caye in 1798, all probability in what the history of the planet must record as one of the greatest demonstrations of courage, conviction, and divine intervention ever. Then on September 21st, our national heroes Price and Golson, along with many unsung heroes, won the battle for independence from colonial British rule in another historic demonstration of belief, fortitude, and divine hand, the prayers and will of a Belizean people that would sacrifice any and everything to live as an independent nation, free from subjugation and deprivation of our inherent right to liberty, prosperity, and sovereignty. As we celebrate our glorious history, we must yield to our obligation to be mindful of the present state of our nation, which unfortunately is floundering. After 4 years of the Briceño administration, ask yourselves, are your lives any better? Can you afford the highest cost of living ever? Are you closer to getting your first home? Did you get your first piece of land yet? Are you getting affordable, quality, public health care? Can you afford to send your children to school? Do you have food security? Are you living the Belizean dream or the dreaded nightmare? While the Prime Minister and his cabinet enjoy life from their air-conditioned SUVs, which chauffeur them to their air-conditioned offices, then to their air-conditioned mansions, all paid for by the taxpayers, they're insulated from the harsh realities of the masses who are punishing under this PUP government, the masses whose businesses are closing, Renko, Smiling Meats, Hophius, Dollar Store, just to name a few. The masses whose dollar is contracting every day, whose poverty is increasing while their quality of life decreases rapidly. No sugar on the shelves. Never under the UDP in 13 consecutive years was there ever a Christmas without sugar. No flour. Packed bread is unaffordable. Carrots and other crops left to rot as farmers are abandoned and victimized. Our utilities are in shambles. No water in Cayo. No light across the nation because of our energy dependency. Public hospitals are without basic supplies, while cronies get rich from the privatized hustle of NHI. Our lives, truthfully, have not gotten any better in the last 4 years. Let us look at the economy. Despite Briceño's annual attempts to deceive Belizeans, we do not see the GDP growth he boasts of, nor do we feel it. I had the opportunity to watch the news last night, and Channel 5 did their own people's response to the State of the Nation speech given by the Prime Minister, and it was a condemnation of his performance. Not one person agreed with any of the lies that he disseminated in his speech, because the growth, the progress, the prosperity that Briceño outlines in his State of the Nation simply does not exist. This so-called highest level GDP, $6 billion, is nowhere to be reflected in the realities of the masses. Everyday Belizeans don't feel it, don't see it, do not know it. The only people getting economic growth in Belize are people like Kenny Zeng with the atrocious $9 million corrupt land acquisition, the illicit gun license business, the Compol with his booming luxury car business, the companies who sell millions of dollars in vehicles to the government every year, the new favorite infrastructure contractor, Mr. Tycrob, Smart Telecom, owned by the Prime Minister's family, who have now taken all of the government contracts from the government-owned BTL. I was alerted this morning, even KHMH now has switched to Smart. The economy is growing for Jaime Briceño and Haisab Diab, along with the chosen few more. The rest of Belizeans have been in a recession for the last 4 years. We have seen our dollar devalue every year, and no IMF reconfiguration of statistical calculations can change that. The State of the Nation is failing when regular Belizeans pay 25% income tax, while special Belizeans pay 6%, and million-dollar corporations pay 3%. The State of the Nation is failing when you fail to collect proper taxes from those making the most, especially those price-gouging leeches, business people who exploit the vulnerable while evading tax compliance. The next UDP government will fix this. So, Mr. Prime Minister, do not tell the nation that all is well. Do not tell the nation that you have created jobs when all you have done is benefit from the expansion of the BPO sector created under the great United Democratic Party government. In fact, this Briceño administration has taken away thousands of jobs by destroying Waterloo and Stake Bank. Investors are fleeing, and confidence is at an all-time low due to the rampant corruption in the Briceño administration. This is the state of the nation. Do not tell Belizeans about a 3% unemployment rate when the poverty rate is 39%, when 130,000 Belizeans remain unemployed or underemployed. That is the reality. That is a nation that is being failed by the state. Let us look at health. The Briceño administration's idea of improving public health is wasting $6.9 million on buying land from Kenny Zeng instead of using the free land on the UB campus outlined in their farcical motion to build a $90 million tertiary hospital at the UB Faculty of Medicine. The Minister of Natural Resources said in the House on Friday, money is not a thing. No problem for them. The PUP government makes this declaration, yet they do not have money for medicine and essential health supplies. KHMH and other public health facilities remain dilapidated, understaffed, and under-equipped. Yet, the Briceño administration approves $6.9 million for land they did not need, much to the condemnation of every head of union and the Belizean public at large. The Ministry of Health's report card from 2020 to 2024 has been horrific and unhealthy for the country of Belize. Instead of the health of our people accelerating to new heights, it has deteriorated since November 2020. Over the last 47 months, under this PUP Briceño administration, things have gotten to the nadir. You look at the performance of Misho Shabat, it seems as if everywhere he goes, there is nothing but disaster. I'll get back to his disastrous tenure as Minister of Public Utilities. But Misho Shabat was the worst Minister of Health ever. I know there must be those calling for the electrician to come back, because the lawyer certainly did the worst job ever. He was unable to manage the COVID pandemic, continuous medical and pharmaceutical supply shortages countrywide due to the pharmaceutical corruption, with cronies popping up with corporations overnight. 3 CEOs resigned, major ministries unfilled. Remember our hero, national medical hero, who almost lost his life, was pushed out by Misho Shabat. They hired a bunch of political campaigners at the ministry under Misho Shabat, family and friends on the KHMH board, with no progress, absolutely no progress. And the former mayor from Orange Walk has done no better, has created no solution. Some say maybe it's because he and his delegation continues to fly around the world while abandoning the necessary overhaul of the public health sector. And this is not just political jargon. This is not political hyperbole. This is coming from the Belize Coalition of Medical Professionals. This is coming from doctors and nurses in public health facilities who walked out of the regional facilities in protest as to the deplorable state of our medical health facilities. Major issues continue with the Southern Region Hospital. KHMH Chairman Dr. Andre Sosa was forced out because he dared to try to bring about the necessary overhaul needed in the public health at KHMH. Poor continuous relationships with the union. Let us not forget when the San Ignacio Community Hospital was under siege, under attack by criminals, and the Minister of Health did nothing except try to suppress the truth. And if it was not for Jules Vasquez and his expose, we would not have known. And the response was not to find a solution. The response was to pass legislation that would prevent the media from sharing information that would uncover these types of truths. When we look at the state of the nation soberly, there is no way that we can say it is anything but a failure. You go to our education system, the bedrock of our nation's future, it has been failed by this government. In addition to not providing the 20% salary promised, the salary increase promised in Scambilese, cutting teachers' salary by 10%, reneging on free education, we are now grappling with a severe shortage of teachers who are overworked and inadequately compensated. This shortage is exacerbated by the looming fiscal cliff, which threatens our ability to invest meaningfully in our schools and do what it is this government promised. Our primary schools, the first touch point for our children's learning journey, suffer from poor infrastructure and glaring deficiencies in funding, and the government is doing nothing to address these urgent matters. At secondary, students continue to drop out at an alarming rate due to poverty. Thus, while the government puts forward cosmetic legislation to increase the age for compulsory attendance, they do little to treat the root cause, which is poverty. At the tertiary level, the state continues to fail miserably, refusing to create a student loan solution so students can pay for their education after they graduate and gain employment. This simple but groundbreaking policy will revolutionize Belize, as there is no greater investment that the state can make, that we as a nation can make, than to equip our people with academic or vocational skill sets. Why? Why is it so difficult to do this? I know that Briceño suffers from the 30-year rot of being in Parliament and being a status quo politician and a status quo leader. So it must be that this Briceño administration wants to keep our masses uneducated, poor, illiterate, and dependent so that they can easily manipulate their votes come election time. Because a people who are independent, a people who do not need a politician for anything other than policies that impact the collective, are a people that this government seem not to want. Because only at that time of an informed electorate, a critical thinking electorate, will we see better legislatures that pass better legislation to better the lives of Belizeans. The Briceño government's ill-advised policy requiring teachers to complete 120 CPD hours within 5 years to maintain their teaching license has created a multitude of challenges for educators that has compounded matters and led to the teacher shortage I spoke of. Educators find this mandate unreasonable, costly, and key contributor to the dysfunctioning education system that we have. Look at More Tomorrow. Teachers not in class, IT vet teachers not attending. These challenges are playing out in real time, where teachers feel that they have to go to extreme lengths to demand better in the classroom. The requirement for the 120 CPD hours in just 5 years has been daunting for many educators. This translates to a considerable burden on teachers who already juggle a demanding workload. This compounds the state for teachers who already go into their own pockets, who make personal sacrifices for their classrooms. The time commitment needed for CPD often competes with essential teacher responsibilities and personal time, leading to potential burnout and dissatisfaction in the education sector. Very costly for teachers as well. Many CPD programs come with expensive associated costs, including registration fees, travel expenses, and sometimes even course material. For teachers, particularly those in underfunded schools on a lower salary scale, these costs can be prohibitive. The financial burden of maintaining a teaching license through CPD can deter individuals from remaining in the profession, and that is why we are losing teachers. 1,500 teachers were not able to renew their license. We need to amend the vigorous CPD requirements so that we can reform and create an opportunity for qualified teachers to continue to function and build our education system. We need to reduce the CPD hours. A more manageable requirement for CPD hours will alleviate the pressure on teachers. Reducing the number of hours needed would make it easier for educators to fulfill their professional development obligations without overextending themselves. These and other solutions would provide for a more equitable and supportive framework for teacher development. We go to crime and we look at the state of affairs and we can assess nothing other than a failure. We do not feel safer because we are not safer. Murder has increased 40% year to date, with the criminal elements having no fear for law enforcement. As I mentioned, the recent terrorizing of the San Ignacio Hospital underpins the lawlessness in our state. A mother and daughter recently murdered in Corozal, babies executed by an assassin's bullet. This is the state of the nation. Police brutality is on the rise due to a culture of corruption where the minister and commissioner of police defend the indefensible and give their favorite officers carte blanche, as we saw with the commissioner's godson who pistol whipped a defenseless civilian, and rather than the commissioner of police declaring that the officer was wrong, made a mistake, and would be disciplined, but should be maybe given rehabilitative options, he made excuses. He tried to criminalize the civilian and lie and defame someone who was wrongfully detained and never arrested. Let's not forget Derek O from Cristo Rey, Corozal, left to die in a police van. Daniel Cal, who last week from Belmopan was murdered in police custody. Let's not overlook the Crown Council protesting due to lack of protection for themselves and witnesses. I recall meeting with members of the DPP's office, and one of the prosecutors almost brought to tears discussing a witness who they wanted to testify, and the witness said to them, "If I testify, I will die." And they convinced the witness to testify, and surely the witness was executed. Our crime rates and the state of our policing system are deeply troubling. Morale within our department is at an all-time low, hampered by political interference and micromanagement. Ineffective policing has led to the extension of the state of emergency, a measure that, according to John Briceño, underscores the failure of the state. It is imperative that we restore confidence in our law enforcement by depoliticizing the process and implementing meaningful reforms. We must invest more to build capacity, particularly with processing of scenes of crimes, forensic, witness protection, evidence integrity. The next UDP government will increase benefits to our law enforcement, to all security forces, housing, land, education, healthcare, as a means to eliminate corruption and boost morale. Imagine you are a police officer and you go out into the field every day, risking your lives, yet you live paycheck to paycheck. Cost of living is unbearable. You can't get a mortgage. You can't get affordable health care. You cannot get a piece of land. I saw a ceremony where the Minister of Police handed out 100 land titles as if there are not thousands of officers. We need to stop the dependency syndrome on the Minister of Police. Let us have collective overhaul so all police officers can go to the Ministry of Land and get their land if they are not in possession of a piece of land. These are the things that we need to do to strengthen our police department so that when they are faced with corruption, when they are faced with the choice as to their integrity and their oath of office, they will choose what is best for Belize all the time. But how can we not expect them to be weak when the state has failed them? The state has provided no security as far as the social safety nets that are needed for who sometimes happen to be our police and security forces become the most vulnerable. We will answer the cries. The UDP government will answer the cries of those in the DPP calling for an overhaul of that system. And we will strengthen the support for the judiciary and the Chief Justice's criminal justice reform agenda. You look at the state of Belize as it relates to national security. On September 7th, just 3 days before we celebrated the 226th anniversary of the Battle of St. George's Key, a group of Guatemalan Navy gunships breached Belizean maritime borders. This just 7 days after the Guatemalan armed forces rammed their vessels into Will Mejia and his BTV vessel, intimidating our Belizeans and putting their lives at risk. This in the context of Briceño just visiting Guatemala, taking pictures with the Guatemalan president, and coming back with nothing but PR and photo ops. Because obviously the protocol Sarstoon that they promised in Scam Belize and respect for our territorial integrity was not on the agenda. The once mighty People's United Party, who promised to put the Guatemalans in check once elected, are now neutered, with the foreign minister having more disdain for the BTV than the Guatemalans who claim Belize as their own. This in our month of national celebrations. This in our month of patriotism. Our BDF remain on the front lines exposed to these hostilities and dangers from Guatemalans and drug cartels, as the United States just this week designated Belize as a major drug trafficking and producing hub, with cocaine laboratories being recently discovered for the first time ever. When Briceño was opposition leader, he accused high-ranking UDP officials of landing the drug planes. We know his family history with drug trafficking, and so the question needs to be asked now, what high-ranking government officials are overseeing the drug trafficking that has led to the first time ever discovery of cocaine laboratories? This Briceño government, in spite of the hostilities, in spite of the dangers that our BDF faces, refuses to honor the salary increase approved by the last UDP government. That is failing. That is the state of failure that we are in. You look at the energy sector and the recent energy crisis that we experience. Even though the Briceño administration knew 4 years ago that we needed more energy capacity, the PUP government did nothing to make Belize less reliant on Mexico and transition us to energy self-sufficiency. Despite BEL being a billion-dollar company, nothing was done to invest in renewable energy to avert the disaster that took place this year, with blackouts across the nation that impacted our day-to-day lives terribly, and even worse, our public health sector and tourism, which were hurt badly by the load shedding due to our dependency on Mexico. Rather than implement short-term, medium and long-term strategies to bring about a permanent solution, the Prime Minister went begging to an outgoing lame duck Mexican president whose successor has not delivered the temporary fix that the PUP claims was promised. The PUP for the last 4 years in everything, and in particular in energy, has proven they have no solution. No solution for energy or antiquated public utilities infrastructure, especially with Misho Shabat at the Ministry of Public Utilities, who spends most of his time allegedly engaged in corrupting the transfer processes by polluting Cayo North with people who live as far as Belize City and have zero connection to Cayo North. This is a failure. This is the state of the nation. Tomorrow we have a wreath-laying ceremony for the Right Honorable George Cadle Price, father of our independence, who was a champion of social justice. Unfortunately, this Briceño PUP government is the antithesis of the pro-poor doctrine of George Cadle Price. In fact, the first thing this PUP government did was remove the poverty alleviation from the portfolio of the Ministry of Human Development. Imagine, George Price's own niece, Minister Balderramos, removed poverty alleviation. This from a socialist, leftist government from the portfolio of human development. And with that was one swoop that eliminated all of the social programs designed to protect the vulnerable from poverty. This done while COVID-19 was still raging and our economy was still ailing, giving rise to an eroding middle class, and those on the margins were pushed into the abyss of poverty. The state of the nation is worse than it has ever been, with a government led by a cabinet of hawks who care only about capitalism and nothing about human capital. The George Price mixed economy has been discarded by the Briceño doctrine of get rich and leave Belize crying. The Briceño doctrine is take the Bolido profits and give it to privatized NHI cronies rather than invest in our athletes who continue to make historic gains, winning our first ever gold in women's volleyball, despite the lack of support from the government. The only time the government comes is to take pictures. If it were not for certain stakeholders, certain coaches, certain private sector people, their lives to investing in our athletes, we would not be able to secure that goal and not be able to perform at the level that we've been performing in other disciplines. The Briceño doctrine is failing all Belizeans in all sectors: our farmers, artists, athletes, teachers, public officers, MSMEs, investors, our students, the working class, and unfortunately, the vulnerable. 4 years and almost $1 billion spent in the Ministry of Infrastructure and Housing, yet we are at a disgraceful 3% of the 10,000 houses promised in the PUP Scam Belize manifesto. Not one house to any of the opposition members of the House. Not one in the last 4 years. Almost $2 billion in loans with nothing to show but ballooning debt that benefits the chosen few. My fellow Belizeans, we have gone from prosperity to punishment under this Briceño administration. The state of the nation is failing. But all hope is not lost. For the people of Belize, the resilient people of Belize, have the absolute power to change the state of the nation in the next general elections. So let us be resolute in our determination for better. We deserve it. Our forebears sacrificed in 1798 for it and led the charge to 1981 for the freedoms that we enjoy, for the rights and the quality of life that we are obligated to provide for ourselves and our families. Long live democracy, long live Belize. Que viva Belize, Dios te bendiga Belize, God bless Belize.